Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, faithful. Here we are. It is game day. The preseason in 2022 is kicking off. The 49ers are playing at Levi's Stadium. This is the Jack Hammer Show. I'm Rob Schuh. That is Jack Hammer. Sorry, the Hammerhead Show. I'm already giving the title all the way to you, Jack. But that's because you are there in Levi's Stadium. You got the badass backdrop. So I have to give you credit for that, man. How you feeling being out there in Santa Clara?
I'm good. I'm ready to go. It's been 12 days of training camp, ready to see something else for a change. Training camp's a lot of fun. We're looking forward to seeing them hit somebody other than another gold helmet for a change.
Yes. Watch them take out that aggression on players not wearing the red and gold. Very excited to do it. We've got a jam-packed show today. What we're going to do is roll through what to watch for. And this is both with an eye towards today, but also towards the 53-man roster, right? Looking at who are those players that may be on the bubble? What do we feel about the position groups in totality? Just wandering through the offense, heading into the defense, closing out on special teams, setting you up for what is about to unfold on the field there at Levi's Stadium, again, where Jack is at the moment. Do me a favor. If you enjoy the content, slam that like button down there to help Jack and I amplify our message. Jack's information is down below in the description of the video. Give him a follow on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and head over to that Press Democrat page that is linked there and bookmark that thing because that's where all of Jack's fantastic content is coming out. And Jack, you were just recently doing a What to Watch article on that Press Democrat site. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I just got that put up a little bit ago, right before I left home to come up here. So about an hour and a half ago, it went live. So you can check it all out there. Basically 6 things. I didn't go through every position group. I just kind of went through. I was going to do 5, but you can't do 5 right now. So I got 6. I threw 6 in there because I had to single out one player to watch.
Hey, 6 is fantastic. It's better than 5. That's like having an amp that goes to 11. Tell me about it.
There you go.
All right.
That's right.
We've got a lot of folks excited in the chat, and I appreciate Chris Royal coming in. Game day, baby. Can't wait to see some of the youngsters out there balling. We've got Charles Thurman, 916 49ers, Sean, 951 Niners, Dan Rostek, Luis Guest, the notorious GAV. We all know who he's pulling for in this matchup. Luke Luna, 187, Quesadilla, Thrilla, 71, Peter Lee, Alex Forget, Panini Luapo. Let me know if I got that one wrong. And Robert Pacheco in the chat. Appreciate everybody here watching. Again, smash that like button if you enjoy the content. Let's start this one off with what everybody's going to be watching here, Jack. We're talking about the quarterbacks, right? We're obviously about to get a huge chunk of information that those of us who haven't been at preseason, at the practices in training camp, have not seen with our own 2 eyes. We've seen from your highlights some highlights and lowlights in camp and the occasional accuracy issues. What are you hoping to see out of Trey Lance today in whatever limited action we get him for?
Yeah, it's going to be limited, but Shanahan said on Tuesday that he wants to see him play tonight because I don't think he expects him to play next Saturday in Minnesota because they have that quick turnaround for the last preseason game. For me with Lance today, it's all about just seeing him. It's the little things. His ability to get the team in and out of the huddle, real, smooth. I want to see him trust his eyes and just let it flow. I don't want to, I want to see a guy who just makes the throws, is comfortable in the pocket, and just does the little things that you expect quarterbacks to do.
And I would expect a pretty vanilla game plan here. Would you think, though, that Shanahan will incorporate a fair amount of those plays that would highlight Lance's skill set, such as pushing it down the field, taking advantage of his ability to get outside of the pocket? Do you expect to see much of that?
Yeah, I think, well, I don't expect them to try to run very much. I wouldn't expect to see Trey Lance run the ball very much on designed runs in a game like this. Instead, I would expect them to try to just get him comfortable throwing the ball, just doing some of their basic stuff. They're going to probably take a shot or 2 down the field because that's what they do. You'll see them throw the ball over the middle. It's going to be a lot of what we've seen in the past. Just go back to what we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo do and what they've run with Jimmy Garoppolo and other quarterbacks over the last 5 years. You're going to see that kind of stuff. It's not going to be anything. I don't think you're going to see anything from this offense is different than what we've seen in the past at all.
And would you expect Trey Lance just to be out there for a series or 2, depending upon the length of the drives there?
Yeah, it's going to depend on the drive, how long it is. If it's a long drive, like, some of the remember last year in the second preseason game, how Jimmy Garoppolo and the offense had like a 12-minute drive that took like almost the whole first quarter.
Right.
You know, if it's a long drive like that, yeah, it's going to be one series. If it's a 3 and out, you're going to see him more than once. But you know, if he's able to get a first down, kind of move him a little bit, it might just only be one possession.
Where would you rank your prediction as far as aggression of the offense? Do you believe that they are going to be aggressive today and attempt to highlight and show what Lance can do? Or will it be fairly conservative, more run plays, shorter passes? What would be your expectation?
I would think it's going to be a little bit more conservative. It's week 1 of the preseason, and I don't think they want to really, you know, it's not like last year where they kind of want to showcase him a little bit because he's the new guy, and even though he's not going to start, they want to get people excited about it. I think this time it's a little bit more about just getting him comfortable, let him make a couple of throws. There might be one deep throw here or there, but it's going to be a little bit more on the conservative side. I think that's what this team so far has been doing best in practice.
I'm looking forward to seeing whatever it is, conservative or pushing the ball down the field. We have Andre Moore here in the chat, Sneakerhead here on the channel, saying, I'm sure Lance will be on point. That has got to be the hope for the vast majority of fans watching because of those occasional reports and video that illustrate some passes not being on target, that I think accuracy will be something fans look at and potentially overreact to one way or the other. With what you have seen so far in camp, acknowledging that there have been days where Lance has looked better than others, are you at all concerned, or do you go into this with a fairly similar outlook on the success of this season based on what you've seen so far from Lance?
It's all the same. We're still a month, you know, just yesterday was a month from the first game. So there's a long way to go still in this preseason and training camp. So I'm just looking to, that's why I said, I'm just kind of looking to see if he's comfortable in the pocket, if he's able to keep it, if he's trusting his eyes and throwing the ball where it's supposed to be going and those kind of things.
Yeah, I would hope to see that as well. Love to see him take some shots down the field when he sees them open. Switching gears from Lance to what a couple of people are looking at here in the chat. Quesadilla Thrilla, another sneakerhead here on the channel, saying, I think Sudfeld loses the number 2 spot to Purdy. So let's take that as a jumping off point. What do you expect to see from Sudfeld and Purdy, who will most likely split the vast majority of this game?
I think, you know, what we've seen from Sudfeld is he's a little more of a conservative quarterback. He's you'll see him take the checkdowns, take the underneath throws. He's had a pretty high completion rate throughout training camp. He's working against the backup, so that helps. But he also can air it out every once in a while. I think I would expect to see him do a decent job in there. That's kind of his game, is check it down and every once in a while take a shot. For the Kyle Shanahan offense plays to his strengths.
And do you believe, as Dan Rostek does here, that Sudfeld has the number 2 position locked up? Is there anything that Brock Purdy could do during the preseason to show that he warrants being the backup for this team?
I think it's Sudfeld's job, that he's the guy. I just, you know, Brock Purdy has had some good practices. The other day he had a really nice one. He only had one completion. That was a drop. But he's not getting the reps like Sudfeld is, and they haven't shown anything to point to Brock Purdy supplanting Sudfeld as the number 2.
I look forward to it regardless. It should be a good competition, even if Sudfeld has that number 2 on lock. Just to bring in a comment here from Rohan saying, hey, he's going to try and find you, Jack. He's there in the stadium, so keep your head on a swivel. It could just be like a Fred Warner situation. He just comes up and lays a hit on you real quick.
Just lays me out, huh?
That's right. It's entirely possible.
Right here behind the stands in front of the media room. They're going to come out. They're going to find me sprawled out.
I mean, you picked a perfect spot, Jack. I just got to compliment that set that you found there. Let's transition to a very interesting room here, talking about the running backs. I actually think this is probably one of the rooms I'm most excited to watch today. I would say definitely top 3 for me. It's an intriguing group. Who are you most excited to see out of the running backs that you haven't seen out there on the field yet, aside from practices?
We got Rohan here. He found me.
Hey, Rohan, welcome to the program, sir.
He's watching you too.
That's fantastic. We got all sorts of cross coverage going on there. Man, that's delightful. You gotta love this community.
As far as the running backs, I'm really looking forward to seeing Ty Davis Price. You know, he talked about it on Wednesday, I think it was. I don't remember what day it was. Said one of these days here this week, he talked about the fact that he's going to finally be able to get into the game, and he's not going to have to worry about taking it easy. He's going to be able to just plan, you know, get a shoulder pads down and run through somebody and really finish off a run. So I'm looking forward to seeing Ty Davis Price. Remember, this is a guy that it's all about physicality with him, right?
Right.
And so you don't see that during camp practice as much as it shows a little bit, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do tonight.
Do you have high expectations for his ability to break tackles and get those yards after contact?
The thing with him is if they give him just a little bit of a crease where he can get his momentum going, he's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, get that inertia going positively north downfield. That will be fun to watch. Who do you anticipate of the backs that get the longest run today? Who do you anticipate to be top in the carries for today? Who's going to get the most number of carries?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think you're going to see all those guys. I don't think you'll see Elijah Mitchell much, if any. But
right.
Trey Sermon got a lot of run on Wednesday's practice. So I would kind of expect to see him and Davis Price be the top two guys, and then Jeff Wilson Jr. and Jermichael Hasty rotating in.
I'm excited to see Jeff Wilson Jr. again because I want to see if he's gotten back his burst that felt like it was missing to some degree last year. From what you've seen so far, what's your verdict on that? Does he have the burst, or is it still lingering from the injury?
It looks better. He looks healthy. He looks healthy. He looks like he's got his game back. Last year he was dealing with the knee injury early on, and this year he doesn't have it. And so I think he's going to be good.
And it would seem like another guy that we may see get extended run today would be Jordan Mason, particularly towards the end of this ball game. Is there any chance in your mind, Jack, that the 49ers carry 6 backs, including Juice, of course, which would then give them the ability to keep both Jeff Wilson Jr., who I would guess would be in the lead for one of those top 4 spots at this moment in time, but also to protect someone like a Jordan Mason who may, over the next 3 preseason games, show us that he deserves a roster spot?
I think that's an interesting kind of a thought process. I think it could happen, but the only way that happens is if they go with a little bit, with 5 receivers, or maybe don't go with 9 offensive linemen like I think they're going to do. So that would require them to juggle some guys at other places. But you know what? 5 running backs with a team that's probably going to run the ball a lot might not be the worst case scenario.
It wouldn't be, especially if you're in fear that you're not going to be able to sneak one of those guys onto the practice squad. If you can, it doesn't make it as much of a concern. Speaking of those wide receivers and potentially keeping 6 of them, let's transition to that group. How much do you expect to see Debo out there with his late arrival into camp? The Niners, making sure that they ramp him up accordingly. Do you think he will get the same amount of run as the rest of the skill position starters?
I don't think we'll see Debo Samuel tonight. I don't think we'll see Debo. I don't think we'll see Brandon Ayuk. I think we'll see, if we do, it's just going to be a quick cameo with Ayuk. I don't think we'll see Debo though. I don't believe Debo Samuel played last year in the first preseason game.
Yeah, I share that sentiment. I would be moderately surprised if we see Debo out there. Certainly surprised if he's out there the entirety of the run with the ones. Brandon Ayuk, I would probably be on the fence about. But other than those 2, which wide receivers are you most excited to see today up against the Packers defense?
I'm really interested to see what Ray McLeod does. McLeod is a guy who, during his time in Pittsburgh, if you look at his numbers, it was pretty much all underneath stuff. It wasn't really getting down the field very much. Whereas here with the 49ers in training camp and all throughout the offseason, you're seeing a guy who's making catches at all levels of the field, short, middle, deep, kind of all over the place. And so I'm kind of interested to see if he can take that, what we've seen in the practices, into a game.
I'm very much looking forward to that. And we'll hit on Ray yet again when we come into the special teams unit. It fascinates me to see how he will be used within the offense. Peter Lee coming in to say Danny Gray and Willie Snead. Willie Snead is a sneaky one in there. Certainly a veteran presence like that who's not afraid to stick his nose in there when it comes to run blocking and get physical. You could see Kyle Shanahan developing an infatuation with that type of player. That strikes me as his kind of guy. Do you think that there's what is the likelihood the 49ers carry 6 wide receivers in your mind? I've been going with that as the default in putting together 53-man rosters, but I have to look at the rest of the team and acknowledge that there are 5 locks, in my opinion, for the wide receiver. But is there anyone else that warrants carrying that 6th wide receiver spot in your mind?
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting. It depends on so many different factors in terms of like special teams and all these other kind of things too. if they go to if they don't carry 6, I could understand 5 because they don't really have a need for a 6th up to be up on game day. They usually are going to carry 5 on game days, so I could understand going with 5 and having a guy like Tay Martin, who's the undrafted rookie free agent, or maybe even one of these veteran guys that doesn't get picked up by another team, bring him back to the practice squad so you have him for later in the year or when necessary. But that was a good point earlier, too. I forgot all about Danny Gray. That shows you how much he's been doing at training camp.
And you do have Rowe coming in here saying, I want to see a 50-yard bomb to Gray. Speaking of bombs, you have Chris Royal coming in with the super chat. Lance and Ayuk, one drive, 50-plus yard touchdown hookup. Boom. I'll take that. I would absolutely take that. It might mean that Lance is back in for a second drive if the TD happens too quickly, but maybe not. Maybe it's a Costanza move where it's like, hey, you leave on the high note. Regardless of when it happens, if Lance throws the touchdown, that's it. Thank you and good night.
Absolutely. That's what you got to do. Hey, if there's anything that you know about life, if you want to take a life lesson, you just need to do what George, just say to yourself, what would George Costanza do?
That's right. That's right. I have lived my life that way. I've had my own summer of George. It's spectacular. It's how it should be, Jack. How it should be. Speaking of Gray, with what you've seen in practice, do you expect that we will see him throughout the offense today, or will he be restricted really to a couple of deep shots? Do you see him on crossers over the middle? Do you see him on shallow routes very often? What is he typically used as in practices?
He does a little bit of everything. One of his better days kind of started off with catching a short crossing route. They've used him, on the end around kind of stuff, like the stuff they use with Debo. They tried that with him. Actually, Debo, I think it was Debo's second practice out here. They ran one of those. That was the first play. One of the first plays they did was with Danny Gray on that end around kind of stuff. So expect him to do everything the 49ers receivers do. He's going to run some short stuff. They'll probably try to hit him deep because, I could see Shanahan wanting to make a statement with his rookies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would certainly fire up the faithful if we saw that out of Danny Gray, and you would think build some momentum as well. How frequently do you expect to see shot plays? Is this the type of offense where we'll get a couple each game, or would you expect more than that once we get into Brock Purdy and Nate Sudfeld? You've already said Nate isn't going to take those shots. The criticism of Purdy is that he doesn't have that much of a cannon. Once we transition from Lance to the two backups, is it going to be primarily intermediate and underneath stuff?
Primarily, but the other day, Purdy had one of the best deep balls of practice the other day, hitting Brandon Ayuk down the left sideline in stride on just a go route. He doesn't have the strong enough arm to really put a lot of air underneath it, so it's got to be a perfect shot, and it was. He hit him right in stride for a long gain on the left sideline. Might have even been a touchdown. So he can do all. He can. That's the thing. If Purdy's in rhythm and he gets the ball to his hands on time, he can make all the throws that you ask him to make in this offense. It's very similar to what we talked about last year before the draft with. The guy that got drafted by New England, right, is he doesn't have the strongest arm, but he gets by with getting the ball to his hands quickly. If Purdy can get the ball to his hands on time, he'll be fine, but there's times when he doesn't.
In particular with Kyle Shanahan's offense, man, he does make it such that typically there is someone to get the ball to if you get it out on time. Well, let's transition to the tight end group, which obviously is led by George Kittle. But behind him, it seems unsettled to this point because you obviously haven't seen the favorite for our number 2 tight end in there after the core muscle surgery. And so it seems like it's wide open since Charlie Warner hasn't been out there. I would guess he snags one of those spots. But then behind that, my best guess is I don't know at this point. When you watch that tight end 2, tight end 3 spot, do you think the 49ers are going to be more concerned with the ability to catch the tight end's hands or the tight end's ability to block?
The tight end room is an interesting one, but I do have to just kind of back up a second because the people's tight end has been at practice all through, and I'm talking about Ross Dwelley.
Ross Dwelley.
The people's tight end. No, I'm joking because that's what I think George Kittle likes to call himself that too.
It is
because of the wrestling thing. But like the tight end room's interesting because you have two guys. The two guys that have made the majority of the plays are Tyler Kroft and Troy Fumagalli. They seem to be the ones that the ball's always going to when it's going to a tight end not named George Kittle. Ross Dwelley got a few targets this week in camp, which I hadn't really seen much of him up until this week. That's a good thing. but beyond that, I think those are the the one that had been standing out in the early going was Jordan Matthews, and he had that bad knee injury there.
I am very much looking forward to seeing who can show on the field what it is that you need to see in order to grab that spot. I made the early prediction of Tanner Hudson, was hearing the early reviews on Jordan Matthews. Obviously, that's no longer going to be the case there. That is unfortunate. Luke Luna coming in with the super chat. Sneakerhead here on the channel says, still got to give love, gratitude. Luke, I read the earlier comment. Didn't know if that was something you'd want me to put up, but man, we should connect offline. Hit me up offline because I'd love to hear what's going on, man. Check in, make sure that everything is good with you, Luke. Appreciate you coming in for sure. All right, so it seems like early on the tight ends were pretty heavily favored in camp. Felt like a lot of receptions going to tight ends. Do you expect some reasonably impressive stats from the tight end room today?
Yes, I would expect to see that they've been, like I said, again, Fumagalli and Croft have been very active and effective. They're interesting. Both of those guys are interesting. They're kind of like, remember Garrett Selleck in the early days of the Shanahan? It was kind of Selleck time when Garoppolo first came here, and they kept kind of connecting on throws and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what Fumagalli and Croft remind me of. Guys that can block, but also, you're not going to worry about them getting deep on you, but they're effective pass catchers, along everywhere.
And Croft has shown that he can do it over a period of some years. And so while it's not been statistically spectacular, it has been solid. And you could certainly see him latching on as tight end 2, tight end 3 on this roster. But he does have to beat out, as you said, the people's tight end in Ross Dwelly, the fans' tight end at least. All right, this one coming up, this is a big one for all the faithful. Everybody's talking about it. It's the offensive line. I said earlier that running back room is one where it's top 3, maybe top 1. One of the other top 3 has to be the offensive line because this feels the most unsettled out of all the units for the 49ers. First and foremost, would you agree with that statement, or do you feel at this point that the offensive line has become fairly settled?
I think it's fairly settled. I think the only place that they're not sure of is center, and the outcome at center might change it a little bit at what happens at right guard, but at the same time, maybe not. That's I think that who the tackles are. I would bet that Aaron Banks is your left guard. I bet that Spencer Burford is your right guard, and I don't usually bet. That's why I'm saying I say that to say that I'm pretty sure about it. And then it's just center. So is it going to be Brendel or is it going to be Brunskill? We'll see how it plays out. In a lot of ways, I'm starting to think that maybe it's going to be Jake Brendel, and that Daniel Brunskill's role is to be the sixth man of the offensive line.
Because he can effectively play every position along that offensive line, right?
He can. He can play center. He can play guard. He can play tackle. So, he'd be the first guy off the bench, I would think. And they don't have anybody else that can do that on their roster, and that would be a big bonus to them when they're constructing their roster and who they're going to have up on game days and those kind of things.
Would you expect to see any of Trent Williams or Mike McGlinchey tonight?
No, I wouldn't expect to see either of those two tonight.
And when you look at the right guard and left guard positions, it has seemed like Aaron Banks and Burford are holding down those spots, really haven't had much challenging as far as the first team goes. But you're right, at center, there is that bit of a rotation. With what you're seeing, though, it still favors Brendel, in your opinion?
Well, here's why I say Brendel is because it would be interesting to me for them to send Brendel to speak with the media if he's not going to be a starter. That's right. The only reason why I say that. Why would you send the backup center to talk to the media if you really think he's going to be the backup this year?
That's a very astute observation. Solid logic there, Jack. Okay, so we've looked at who you're expecting to start. Because this feels like a very deep unit, and that's what I've always taken comfort in, is even if we didn't know the starting five prior to training camp, that I felt the depth there gave me solace. Do you expect to see this unit thrive against the Packers given that depth?
I think they'll be okay. I think that the starting tackles will, I'm not sure who's going to play on which side, but I have a pretty good feeling it's going to be Justin School and Colton McKivitz. I don't think they're going to be going up against the Green Bay's top pass rushers tonight, and I think they'll be able to hold their own in this matchup. If we're looking at week one, against Green Bay, and Green Bay's best defense was out there, and he told me that it was going to be Colton McKivitz and Justin School, I'd be saying something a little bit different.
Slightly concerned at that point.
Yeah.
Justin School, do you think there's a legitimate chance that he makes the roster, or is it looking like he's on the fringe right now?
I think that there's they like him. I think he's one of their better tackles, but I do also believe that there's a possibility that he's going to get pushed by the new guy that they signed. I'm blanking on his last name, Mills. He was the one, I can't remember his first name, but they just signed him recently, and he looks really good. He's a veteran that's done it for a while, so that helps him stand out. And School's an interesting one because School gets beat. He gets the pants beat off him every day in one-on-one pass rushing drills, and then they get into team, and he does a little bit better. And that just kind of shows you, like, the one-on-one stuff is one thing. It's not realistic it is, but it isn't. And then they get into when you get into team, you got everybody helping you out.
Yeah, you're operating as a unit, which is the most closely assimilated to real game scenarios. That's fascinating that you'd be more of a gamer in that respect than being able to win those one-on-one drills. Who's the backup player along the offensive line that you're most excited to see today?
Hold on a second. I got the drummers are starting to. I don't know if you can hear that in the background.
Ooh, yes, sir.
But, they're warming up over there. The backup that I'm most excited to see along the offensive line. I don't know. I don't have an offensive lineman that I'm really excited to see. I think it'd be interesting to watch and see what Nick Zakelj does.
Yes. Zakelj and Donovan West are two that I have my eye on for today to see if either one can do something that would warrant them making the 53-man roster. Because as it breaks down currently, I struggle to put together any picture that has either of those two cracking the 53-man.
Yeah, same here. Right now, I think it's been a struggle for Nick Zakelj, bigger than what the Fernanders were expecting it to be for him. So I do think that's something that could be an issue. In some ways, if you want to talk about backups that you're looking forward to see again, now as we talk it through, I realize that I missed the answer. The real answer is Jason Poe. That's the answer.
Jason Poe, that is the answer. Poe is good. I mean, after I read the article about him training with Trent Williams and that whole story, not only did I gain additional respect for Trent Williams, which I thought would be difficult to do with the level of respect I already held Trent at, but it gave me a real taste of who Poe and Burford are as individuals and what they're willing to invest in themselves this season. And it really inspired me for both of them. And so it's right. I want to see that athletic freakishness from Poe because it feels like at his stature, if he can truly get up under defensive linemen, he could win the leverage battle being a little bit shorter and stouter.
Yeah, I don't see a way that I don't see how you can get underneath Jason Poe because he's short. He's taller than me, but for an NFL player, he's short compared to everybody that he's playing against. So he's going to get underneath you and win that battle all the time. So we'll see how it plays out for him. But I do want to see him go out there. And one of the things you're talking about him working out with Trent Williams. For me, from the day that I first saw Jason Poe on the field during rookie minicamp till now, it's so dramatically different, and I can't help but think some of that has to do with the work that he put in with Taylor in the offseason after OTAs and minicamp.
And you could imagine what that might do for his confidence. And confidence is such a critical piece for young guys coming into the NFL because you could also see someone coming in and feeling completely overwhelmed. Not only is it a completely different environment with a bunch of grown-ass men that you're playing with now, but everything is moving faster and so on and so forth. If you can get that confidence back and just focus on playing, that is so helpful in catching on as a rookie.
Yeah, I think that's spot on because I think that's the biggest difference is that when I saw him the first day during the rookie minicamp, he looked like he was just, whoa, what's going on? Where am I supposed to go? That kind of thing, And as it got, and now he just looks like one of the guys, and he's short, but the way that he plays isn't short at all.
No, it's stout. It's not short, but it is stout. Harold Murillo coming in to say what I think all of us are thinking here. We're excited, Jack, to see your film reviews and breakdowns as we get past these preseason games and into the regular season. I can't wait to do some film breakdown with you, Jack. We're back to football. I'm just excited. I am just excited.
No, absolutely. This is the best time of the year from August till February or whenever the 49ers season finishes. And to be able to do those film reviews is a lot of fun. And that means I got to spend some money to get them.
Yes. All right. So we've covered the offense. We're going to transition to the defense. Maybe the deepest freaking position group on the team, talking about defensive line. Yet again, much like the 2019 defense, this line is absolutely stacked. Seemingly the best chance to repeat that special nature of what the defense was able to do in 2019. What do you want to see today that's going to continue or boost that confidence that this line can truly be an elite pass rush unit? You're muted, bud. Got that drum line in back of you.
Yeah, I muted myself for the drummers, and then I droned myself out. I'm looking to, it's going to be interesting to see who plays. That's the first thing. Is I don't think we're going to see Javon Kinlaw. I would highly doubt we'll see Nick Bosa. There's no real reason for either of those two to play tonight. Does Samson Ebukam play? So if Ebukam and Bosa and Kinlaw don't play, then it's going to be on full display what their depth looks like, because they have some really good depth pieces. And somebody to keep an eye on tonight would be Alex Barrett. He's not been on the roster the last couple of years. He's been back and forth on the practice squad. He's up and down a little bit, but he's a defensive end that does a lot of stuff from defensive tackle as well, and he's been very good in practice.
And he would currently be very much on the fringe for making the team.
He would be one of the bubble guys. I think he's elevated himself to be closer to the bubble than I would have originally thought.
That's good to hear. I mean, the more competition that we have at that defensive line spot, the deeper it is. I feel very optimistic about it, not including him in the list of players that make this team. I'll be thrilled if we have an even tighter push towards the end. It would lead me to believe that even though, trades are fewer and far between at this point in time, the Niners have historically traded some players away when they have a glut of talent at a position. We did that trade with Denver a couple years ago, or last year, was it? That was for the linebacker Griffith for the 6th round pick. Do you expect that maybe we see that when it comes down close to the 53-man cuts? There is so much talent along this defensive line and so many teams out there that are starved for talent there. You think the Niners trade one of these fringe players?
I think there's a possibility that maybe one of these veterans could get moved. Either along the defensive line or at linebacker. Both of those spots are pretty well stacked with talent. I think it'd be more likely at linebacker than at defensive line, just because the guys that they have on the back end of that roster that are pretty good, like an Akeem Spence or Robert Kimdichie. I don't know if they would really have to worry about those guys heading out somewhere else and getting signed. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Robert Kimdichie, that seems like a stretch. A guy like a Jordan Willis type feels like he's a fringe, and if you have Alex Barrett making it, maybe someone like Jordan Willis might have some value around the league. I want to ask you about which defensive ends in the latter half of the roster you have the most optimism about. But before I do, I'm getting to Even Steven here, who dropped the super chat. Want to say thank you to Even Steven. Says, I'm so excited to see this game tonight. Let's go Niners. Yes, sir. That excitement is palpable. Even Steven, I feel that excitement, and I too share that excitement. And Jack is standing right next to Levi Stadium, so I know he's feeling that excitement.
That's right. I'm ready to go. Hey, I just, like the guy in the comment section said, I had the drum line going for me, and I definitely marched to the beat of a different drum.
It's glorious. And you got to get the excitement out now, because you'll be in the press box and they kind of frown on the whole cheering and being a Niner faithful in that press box, which is unfortunate. I always hated that covering teams for my college career, but it is what it is.
I thought I was going to get kicked out last year, week 17 with Trey Lance, because I was getting so mad, so frustrated with some of the stuff in the beginning of the game. Good thing for me, he picked it up in the second half. I might have been out in the street.
That's fantastic. Ryan Bowes coming in here to say, I think our D is going to be scary. I agree. I completely agree. That gets us back on track for our defensive line, which is going to be the heart of this defense, unless it's the linebacker room. We'll touch on them in just a moment. In the defensive end, again, towards the latter half of the roster, what's a name that some of the people should be looking at? Who do you have optimism about?
Along the bottom end of the roster, I think that's where you start to get into Kamoko Ture territory. Right? Yes, I think that's where he would be marked as right now. It's kind of on the bottom of the edge rusher room. So Kamoko Ture, I'm really wanting to see what Drake Jackson does tonight, the rookie. He's really looked a lot better in training camp than what I thought of him in OTAs and minicamp. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if he can bend the edge and get upfield on those quarterbacks like I've seen during camp.
It's very exciting. I also am looking forward to seeing Kemoko Turay. He's one of those names that, feels like he's on the bubble. Had a great practice, as I hear the other day in listening to Rohan, who made a guest appearance here on the program moments ago. If a lot of these guys, Jack, aren't getting in until they're going against the Packers' third or fourth string offensive linemen, two questions on that. Do you expect that we'll see some inflated stats? Follow-up to that is, do you think then that the 49ers will temper their reaction to those stats? You're muted.
I think you'll see them, they'll temper their response to it, right? They understand if they've got that it's the second and the third unit or what have you. They understand that to a certain extent. I think that's part of the reason why we saw what happened with the quarterback situation last year and so on. They realized who they were going against and all that kind of stuff. So I think it'll be the same thing with the defensive linemen. But it'll be fun to see if it plays out the way that we think. It'll be fun to see them get after Green Bay quarterbacks, even if it's not Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely. Even if it's not A-Rod, it'd be more fun if it was A-Rod. But even if it's not, it will be. And I'm on board with Luke Luna here saying defense is top 3. Book it. I feel good about saying this defense has every chance to be tops in the league, and I don't regret saying it one bit. All right, looking at the defensive line, what's your way too early prediction that nobody's going to hold you to except everyone watching this video about who has the biggest statistical jump this year?
The biggest statistical jump is going to come from Samson Ebukam.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
Do you see that because of the way in which he turned it on at the end of last season, or have you seen something in camp so far that leads you to continue believing that he's going to pick it up?
He's looked every bit as good as he was at the end of last year, and the fact that it's going to be for 17 games, you're going to see his numbers go up.
I love that prediction. I'm going with Charles Omenihu as my candidate there. I think both could have fantastic seasons. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. All right, we talked about it. Hey, defensive line may be the deepest room that the Niners have, but if it's not D-line, hell, it could be linebacker. Certainly if you're just looking at top to bottom as far as the starters go, they have been called the greatest linebacker core in the NFL. How much do you expect to see of those top 3 today? Are we going to see much from Fred Warner, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Dre Greenlaw?
I don't think we'll see much, if anything, of them. I think I saw already in the comment section where Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw were rolled out for tonight. I don't think the 49ers gain a whole lot from either of those two playing tonight. I just let them roll, keep them healthy. Get into Minnesota next week and let them, beat up on the Vikings in those 2 scrimmages and then get ready for the season.
And then the 49ers round out that room, at least with the players I consider to be a lock, right? You have Warner, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Greenlaw, those 3. Add in Oren Burks, the big signing out of Green Bay, who's a stud on special teams, but also a very capable backup linebacker. And Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, again, a stud on special teams that we were able to keep around from the squad last season. Do you see this as potential for a 6th linebacker in this group? Does anyone like a Curtis Robinson have a chance of making this team, or do you view the linebacker room as fairly solid, barring some type of a trade? You're muted.
Those drummers are really giving me a bad time. But next time they do it, I'm just going to turn around. No, they're not there anymore. I think they moved on. They got afraid of me. They saw me look at them a couple times.
You gave them the turnaround, the full turn.
I did. I gave him that, that dad look, right? Where you get tired of the kid, like in the car, giving you a hard time and, asking you when you're going to stop for food. And you finally just turn around and you tell them never. Yeah. I think that was what they saw me do. But no, I think the top 5 linebackers, I think, are set, barring injury. It's going to be Fred Warner and Azeez Al-Shaair, Dre Greenlaw, Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, and then you have Oren Burks. That's your 5-man linebacker crew for the 49ers. But they have some really talented guys around that, which is going to be fun tonight. Like you meant, Curtis Robinson is one of them. Saguna Lube as a rookie that's shown out really well. There's another one as well. There's a few of them that I just don't remember all their names right now.
Yeah, but you expect to see some good showing out there on the field from those candidates, as you have seen in training camp to this point?
I do. I think you'll see them doing well. It's interesting. It's funny. I put out a tweet the other day because it seems like it doesn't matter who the quarterback is for the 49ers. The ball just magically goes to their linebackers, whether it's whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo last year or the years before, Trey Lance this year, even Nate Sudfeld and Brock Purdy to a certain extent. It's a product of the offense, but it'll be fun to see how they do against Green Bay here tonight.
And a somewhat linebacker-centric defense, right? With some studs at the linebacker position, an ex-linebacker as your defensive coordinator, and his positional group coach still there as the linebackers coach. And so it makes sense that, DeMeco Ryans may want the linebacker room to have the greatest amount of success.
Yeah, heck, you got a guy that was a former stud linebacker, and he's running your defense, and it makes sense that the linebacker room is probably, if not the best, just right up there with everybody else.
It is definitely up there. Let's talk about the last remaining group because we lumped them together here on defense. So we'll break it down a little bit because we're talking about the secondary, obviously including all the defensive backs and the safeties in that big bucket there. The big storyline here is that the highly anticipated starting duo of Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley going to be out tonight with those soft tissue injuries, both expected to be back for week one. How do you expect the remaining cornerbacks to fare in this matchup against Green Bay and their wide receiver core?
That's going to be the fun thing to watch. That's one of the things I put down to watch is, you don't have Charvarius Ward, and like you mentioned, and you don't have Emmanuel Mosley. Ambry Thomas has kind of been the guy that you throughout practice, this training camp so far, if you want to get a completion, and he's going to probably be in the starting lineup tonight. Kadar Holman is the guy who got drafted originally by the Packers out of Toledo, but he's bounced around the NFL. He was with 3 different teams on practice squads last year. And then you have Diamador Lenore, who struggled last year early on and against the Packers, had a blown coverage to Devontae Adams late in that game that cost the 49ers the game, really. And we hardly ever saw him on the field after that. So that's going to be your starting guys on the outside, some combination of those 3. So that's going to be something to definitely keep an eye on tonight because, the 49ers have a really good starting duo at cornerback. The probability of them playing 17 games is not likely given everything we've seen from Emmanuel Mosley, especially throughout his time here in San Francisco.
And when you look at Holman, what have you seen so far in practice? Do you see a capable fill-in starter or a little bit below that as far as talent goes?
He's a little bit below that. I think, the 49ers backups beyond what they haven't been quite as strong as you would hope. For the most part, they've been able to they've gotten chewed up when they've been out there. They held their own a little bit the other day, and part of that was because the 49ers they kept taking deep shots, and then Lance had some bad passes of his own. I'm talking about Wednesday's practice, but the day before that he ripped them apart. So they're up and down. That's the biggest piece there.
And when you look at the cornerback position, if we're thinking about a cut down to the 53-man roster, do you have a gut sense as to how many cornerbacks the Niners might look to keep at that position? It feels like there's a ton of young players that are moderately unproven. Would you guess that the Niners are keeping somewhere in the range of 7 cornerbacks when they cut down?
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. That I would guess because they're gonna you've got to have at least 4. Right, and then you got a nickel guy gave you 5, and you're usually going to have 1 more maybe. So, somewhere between 6 and 7, I think would make sense. You go from there.
I had seen a great list that honestly I can't really dispute on my own. But as far as cornerbacks, looking at Charvarius Ward, Emmanuel Mosley, quite obvious. Ambry Thomas and Diamador Lenore, feeling pretty obvious as well. Dante Johnson on there, Darquez Dennard, and Samuel Womack. So you have the 2 players currently competing for that nickel spot. And then on the physically unable to perform, sneaking Jason Verrett on there as additional depth. But that does leave some names out there, a guy like Tariq Castro-Fields, potentially, the gentleman that we were just referring to, who has had run as an outside corner. That definitely feels like it could be one of the players that make the 53-man roster. When you hear that list, does that feel about right to you? Are there any names that feel obvious you would switch out?
No, that seems about right. I think that sounds about right. The Dante Johnson one is an interesting one because this is a guy who they didn't have him on the roster last year all the way through, right? He was a practice squad guy that they kept pulling up on game days. So that's, again, it'll be interesting to see how they manage the roster. I really like Dante Johnson. He's a he's an interesting one because he can play everywhere at the drop of a hat, and it's he's not a guy that you're going to say I want to have him start for me every week, but shoot, what he can do is really impressive, and that's why he's been around the league for 9 years.
Yeah, to me, this is one that's highly fascinating, and you just jumped me on. That was literally my follow-up question, so that's fantastic timing there as to whether Dante Johnson and the fact that he could play every position, does that value offset one of the young additions? What does your gut say? Again, a way too early prediction. Do the Niners keep around the barnacle, Dante Johnson, or do they make room thinking that he doesn't get signed by another team and he would be available as an asset later on, and instead keep one of the younger, talented players, unproven players, I should say?
Yeah, I've kind of always leaned towards them doing the latter there, where they keep one of the younger guys around so that they don't lose him. And then he's on the practice squad because he agrees that he wants to be a 49er. And then he just kind of comes up and down as necessary on game day.
Right, because if he's not on the roster for week 1, then his salary is not fully guaranteed. You can bring him up and down and just pay him a game day check when he's actually on the team. Daniel Garcia coming in to say, I like Dante. He knows the scheme and can play a couple of positions. Yeah, like all of them. I mean, that dude is everywhere. As far as a Swiss Army knife goes, there's a lot of value there. It just does become a risk reward of like, hey, can we waive him and not lose him? I think if the Niners knew they were losing him by waiving him, they wouldn't do so. It will become hey, like, can we risk it and be rewarded by that? Did you just get rejoined by the drum line there, Jack? All right, we're getting a visual here. I like it.
That's what I'm competing with out here.
It sounds great. I mean, I don't know if you hear it differently than the audience, but it doesn't drown you out. It just is like game day experience, man. It's absolutely delightful, and I'm here for it. So we've talked about Dante, and you have said that you're leaning towards the way too early prediction that the Niners could risk losing him to keep one of those younger players on there. Let's switch over to the safety position. Do you expect Talanoa Hufanga, who seems to be holding down that strong safety position, to get a little more run time than most of the other starters on defense to get him acclimated to the position? Or would you expect him to be in there just as long as any of the other starters are out?
I would expect him to play about as long as, play with if Jimmy Ward's out there with him, I expect that duo to play together. I think he does need a little bit of seasoning, and it's been interesting, because I can't say that completely though, because they've been doing a lot of rotations in the last week with, Ward working with Moore and Ward working with George Odom and vice versa, and all those guys have been working together. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide to run it during the game. I'd be a little surprised though to see Ward out there too much. They're all walking behind me now.
Nice. Hey, that's a great drum line. I'm telling you.
It is.
Niner noise, baby.
Oh, they sound great. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, it is. I'm a big fan of the Niner noise. I think that's a great addition to the game day experience. I vote on that as a win when they brought that in back at Candlestick and carried it over to Levi's. Well, you also got to my follow-up there, which was, do you think we'll see less of Jimmy Ward to get a better look at the rest of the safeties? And I would agree that it's possible, and who knows what they'll take as far as a strategy, keeping him healthy versus keeping him out there alongside Huff so that they get used to playing with one another. When we look at the nickel position there, do you expect to see what we've seen in camp so far? Darquez Dennard coming out with the starters and then transitioning to Sam Womack after that.
Yeah, you talk about nickel, that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing, because I really like Sam Womack. I've been talking about liking Sam Womack since I watched his college film. I think I'm almost as hyped on Sam Womack as the 49er scout that was pounding the table to get him on the, to get him drafted, right?
Nice.
I really liked him. He's a heck of a cover guy. I never had a question watching him on film, like if he was going to be able to, and then watching him early on at camp, if he was going to be able to cover an NFL guy. More for me was, can he fit in the run game? Can he come up and make the tackles necessary in run support? We've seen him kind of do that out here during training camp. He's getting into the right positions, but they don't tackle and wrap up, right? So when he's in the right place at the line of scrimmage to stop Tyrion Davis-Price, he's also not getting Tyrion Davis-Price putting his helmet into his chest. So, that's not going to happen tonight. He's going to actually have to tackle somebody. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
That will be good to see. Absolutely. I want to bring in a couple of comments. We got Dustin Kohler here saying this is the best time of year. Optimism at its peak. Go Niners. Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate that. We got Jerome M. This one's an interesting one that I just wanted to ask you what your observation is here, because I have heard things about Ambry Thomas. Jerome M., sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in to say Ambry lost confidence, it sounds like. Is that your interpretation of what we're seeing from as it sounds, the slightly struggling second-year cornerback?
I wouldn't say slightly, man. He's struggling big time. But at the same time, I think that the one thing is, like, Emmanuel Mosley and the other corners have really been trying to coach him up and teach him up and keep him up. I do think there might be some confidence issues. It's hard when you're getting beat over the top by guys regularly, especially if it's a rookie that you're like, damn, why can't I get this guy covered? I know he's fast, but I should be able to cover him. Stuff like that. That's me thinking what I would be thinking if I was in that position, not what he's saying. But, I think there might be some confidence issues. But the one positive there is, I will say, Emmanuel Mosley and the other veteran corners have really been working through things with them as the plays and reps are unfolding.
That would seem to indicate a unit that is close-knit and also one that sees talent in him. I would think, as true professionals, as professionals in the NFL, that if they didn't see the talent, if they didn't think it was worth investing in the young gentleman, they wouldn't. And therefore, my guess would be, if they're spending that extra time, they're doing it because they believe they can coax more out of him.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's Jeremy, who's the one that put this one up there. He says in another comment that he likes Ambry. I like Ambry too. I was pretty high on Ambry Thomas after watching his film last year. I thought he was going to be really good. I've been a little surprised by his struggles in man coverage. And I want to see him succeed too. I think he's a Michigan guy. He's a Michigan Wolverine. I'm a big fan of the Michigan Wolverines, even though I've lived out in California my whole life, watched too much of Michigan football in my day as a kid. But I want to see Ambry Thomas succeed. He's struggling through it, but we're going to see if he can pick it up tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be fascinating to watch. Dustin Kohler coming back in. Ambry fan as well. Biased Michigan fan, though. Hey, that's all right. Whatever the reason is, that's okay. Those still watching, we're getting to the special teams right now before we close out. But if you enjoy the show, hit the like button for us. Smash that thing like Ronnie Lott would have. And go find Jack's information down in the description. If you don't follow him on Twitter, that's a mistake. If you're not subscribed to him on YouTube, I don't know what the hell is wrong with you. If you don't read his content at the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, come on, man. Let's get this together. No, go down into the description and make sure that you're following Jack on all of those ways and smashing that like button, because we're excited. It's freaking game day. Let's transition, Jack. Let's hit that last freaking topic of special teams. I feel like it's almost inevitable with a team that is as deep as everyone keeps saying, myself included, because special teams is typically made up of players at the tail end of a roster. Ipso facto, when you have a super deep team and you're using the tail end of your roster to build out special teams, that bodes well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it should, right?
It should.
It was awesome. There was a comment from, it's not even, former 49ers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel was asked a question about utilizing some of his top guys as return guys. And he talked about how important special teams is to giving your offense better field position, giving your defense better field position, and how that helps you score and take away points and all that kind of stuff. And that's why the 49ers went out and they focused on bringing in guys during free agency that are going to help them as solid backups on defense, a solid wide receiver on offense, but they're going to be good core special teamers. And Brian, their new special teams coordinator, has even mentioned that those are the guys that he sees standing out in practice.
And he was so stoked to get his full list of, like, who do you want? Like, dream scenario, who do you want as your players? He was like, all right, fine. If I could have anybody I want these guys, these three dudes. Boom. All three on the roster now. That seems to bode well for a featured special teams unit. What's your confidence? We spoke about him earlier when we were talking about the offense. Ray McLeod potentially vying for enough reps to consider him maybe the wide receiver 3. Certainly someone we have our eye on when we're talking about the offense when it comes to today's game. What's your level of confidence in his contributions in the return game as the expected featured returner for this special teams unit?
I think he's going to be good. I think, they have high expectations of him, and we haven't really seen him. We've seen him run the ball, but he's just running against air in practice, right? I think it's going to be fun. We might get a chance to see him return the kick tonight, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the 49ers potentially start possessions across the 25 for a change. That'd be a good start.
That would be an excellent start, Jack. No pun intended, but pun intended. John B comes in to tease my next follow-up question. Sneakerhead here on the channel. He says, Rob, what are the chances the 49ers throw Malik Turner out there to return a couple kicks or punts to shore the position up? And that was my follow-up question. Do you see any surprise candidates to look for as a returner for the Niners? Anyone you've seen out there in training camp catching punts or kicks that we aren't really expecting to play a role there?
No, I think if you go through the list of the roster of guys who you would expect to maybe see back there, they're all catching the ball at some point just to get down, get used to it. I'm pretty sure that it's Raymond McLeod's job to lose, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Malik Turner maybe return the kick. Other than that, I think we're going to see him on coverage units and stuff like that.
That makes a ton of sense as well, and that tees up my final question here for you, Jack.
Real quick. And this might be your next question. I don't know. But that's one of the things to look for tonight is pay attention to who is lined up on the special teams units. Pay attention to who you see on the kickoff team. Pay attention to see who you see on the return units. Not necessarily the returners, but the guys in front of them, because those are the guys that are on the fringe of the roster. And those are you can get some idea of roster things through who's out there on special teams.
Throughout the NFL, that's very true. If you're going to make the tail end of a 53-man roster, you should be able to contribute on special teams. That feels especially true about a Kyle Shanahan-led team, that he has been very clear on wanting people that can contribute there at the tail end of the roster, and that's just good roster construction. And that does lead me into the final question, which is, should this also be an elite coverage unit because of those additions that we talked about? You have George Odom coming in, Oren Burks as well, and you still have players that were a part of not a great unit, but good coverage guys, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Jeff Wilson Jr., right? Do you expect this to also be a good coverage unit in addition to being able to get us out past the 25 at some points?
Well, I like what you said there. I like the fact that you use Jeff Wilson Jr. See, you using Jeff Wilson Jr. on special teams. That's one of the reasons why I think he makes this team, because of his versatility to play fullback and halfback and play on special teams. Another name that you missed there is Tarvarius Moore. His return back from injury. He was a key part of that in 2020 and 2019. So I do expect to see him as well. I got to move here. They're going to clean the garbage can, so I got to move my spot a little bit. But I think what's the question again? What was I talking about?
You're talking about the elite coverage unit and how the 49ers had managed to keep around some players, Jeff Wilson Jr. And the player that I did not mention.
Yeah, and Tarvarius Moore. So, it's going to be good. And here come the drummers. You're going to get the full effect. They're coming right behind me.
It's perfect timing, Jack. Absolutely perfect timing. Hey, man, I want to say it has been so fantastic to get your take on today's game live from Levi Stadium. I feel like that is a phenomenal atmosphere for you to be at. It fires me up because I get to hear Niner noise. I'm just going to be losing my shit for the next hour and a half thanks to them. I'm going to have a drop-off, right? I peaked too early, and I got the next 90 minutes to try and revive myself for the game. But as soon as I see that red and gold out there on the field, I'm going to be jazzed up. That's for sure, man. How beautiful. Have you had a chance to see the grass out there yet, Jack? Because I remember you and me both, when you walked through those doors at Candlestick, that was one of the most memorable things, coming out, seeing that field in the sunlight when it was sunny there at Candlestick. Have you seen the grass yet today?
I haven't seen it personally. I've seen pictures of it. I can't wait to get in there and see it. But no,
I envy that experience, Jack. When you walk out there and see that green, there's nothing like that feeling.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's the thing about my job that I get to do today is not only do I get to see it, I get to go put my computer down and then I get to go walk out on it. So that's the other part too. But
nothing like touching the grass at an NFL stadium. It's a religious experience for a guy like me, and I know you're similar, Jack.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why, I have that ability with my credential, and I take advantage of it because I want to get out there. I want to see it. I want to experience everything that's going on. It's just really cool to be a part of it. And then it helps me with my writing. I think it just gets me jazzed up too.
Absolutely. Well, I want to join Daniel Garcia in saying thank you, Jack. Cheese coming in to say thanks, Jack. You the man. I couldn't agree with that more. Jack is absolutely the man. Again, his information is down below in the description. Harold coming in to say awesome job, fellows. And that includes me, so I will take that. Jack, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to break this game down with you next week, my friend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun to talk about. You guys can follow. Get the 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. The Press Democrat blog. It's going to be a live blog throughout the game. I'll be putting my thoughts throughout the game, so check it out.
That's fantastic. The description of the blog Jack is talking about is the link to the blog Jack is talking about is down in the description of the video. Go down there, open that up, and have it in your browser for the game tonight. I will. I'll be there. All right, everybody, enjoy the countdown to the game. Jack, enjoy the game day experience. I look forward to catching up with you after that, and you guys know the drill. Until next time, cheers, faithful.